sorry guys. I just wanted to also say, for the July, August classes, I could come any day, just earlier any day, the better.
All right.
So yeah, any days.
So by what time is it cut off?
Not really any cut off. It's just that like earlier in the day is a little easier than later.
Yeah. Well, for sure. The start time might push forward from 10 to 9, huh?
Yeah, that's okay.
So yeah.
Yeah, so any time is good. Once it's just as early.
Okay.
As whenever.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much.
All right. Sorry. Hey, Sean Maurice. Good afternoon. How you doing? All right. Hey, Keely. Afternoon. How are you? All right. Afternoon. Yeah. So there's it on Shiloh. You guys, right? Okay. All right. So she should be here soon. So then, I guess everybody would be here. Okay. All right, folks. So yeah, sorry again for the delay. Rain had an impact on today's start time. Anyhow, let's get some water in the system and let's get going. All right. All right, folks. Afternoon. Thanks for your patience. So last week it was day 3 of depreciation, and we took a look at the reducing balance method. So we said that first of all, depreciation is what? It's a loss in value of a non-current asset over time. Now, why would assets lose value? When you use them, when you use things that wear down, when you drive a car on Trinidad roads especially, things start to go wrong pretty fast. Right? The more you use your phone, the more pictures you store, the more memory you use up, and the slower it runs, and the apps don't work as well, and all sorts of things, right? Also, when things just kind of age, right? When things age, the passage of time, things lose their ability to do or perform tasks that they once used to. And then they also have this thing called obsolescence. So like when the new iPhone comes out, the older iPhones become a little less attractive, and the new one can do things the old ones can't, right? So when an asset can no longer meet the demands placed on it, we said it is suffering from obsolescence. It's becoming more and more obsolete. And then we had one called depletion. So like if you had a fruit farm and of course you pick the fruits from the trees, you have less fruits on them now. So the trees have less value than before. After you pick the fruit, the trees now have less value than they did before you picked the fruit. Because before you pick the fruit, they had the fruit, right? But in order to make money off of these things, you have to pick the fruit to sell it, right? Same thing with like what you call it, like quarries or deposits of mineral and ore and natural gas and crude oil and these things. So when you have these things stored in the earth, there's a value attached to them, but the value can only be, as we say, realized, right? When you extract these things from the earth and then sell them on, well, as we do. Okay, now we talked initially first, like I said, about what depreciation is and why it happens, the causes. We talked about the rationale, the different principles in play. We had the first method called the straight line method. So we said the straight line method is a bit more apt or appropriate for assets that wear down more evenly. For example, the tables and chairs you guys have there, they provide more or less the same value year to year, right? Some of them have had for since he started, boy, about 15 years, and some of them had to be replaced, right? This particular desk I have about 20 years now. About this one I was still working in Fatima for my previous version of my lessons, right? Anyhow, so when assets wear out evenly or provide benefits, the same benefits more or less from year to year, we can depreciate them using the straight line method, right? So that results in the same charge in depreciation, a constant depreciation charge from one year to the next. All right, so of course we have some other terms, cost and residual value and useful life. So we did an example with the calculation, right? The journal entry. And now we said that there's a second method of the bookkeeping for depreciation where we actually debit depreciation expense initially while crediting the provision for depreciation. And then after that, we'll debit income statement and credit the depreciation expense account. So that's, like I said, the more American version of accounting for it. I only met that when I went to UE. Not that it's like a UE level thing. It's just different. I actually kind of like it because it provides a better consistency with the expense aspect of depreciation, right? But we'll talk about that the next time. So CSEC normally, in a CSEC textbook, you'll find this particular version. I don't know that you'll find the other version, but again, I said, I'm not saying they're not there. I'm just saying I don't know, all right? If anybody, of course, has any CSEC textbooks and wants to take a look and let me know, by all means, right? After we did the journal entry, we had the T account. And as you can see with the T account, every year, we charged the same amount. Where did that come from? It came from the calculated figure on top of here, right? So every year, 2,000 is credited to the provision account. So you see it here. The balance is then carried down to the start of 2022. We charge a next 2,000 at the end of 2022. So we have a total charge now of 4,000. That's brought down to 2023. In 2023, we charge another 2,000. The total balance now is 6. And then we repeat one last time in 2024. We charge another 2. And then the total is now 8,000. Now, at the end, they were supposed to dispose of the asset, but asset disposals is not in the syllabus anymore. And that's a conversation for a different time. So I want to do you after CXC results. Any advice? Brace for impact. That's a big jump. You may have to do a year in something called N1 or something. I'm not sure. But me, you should check that out more if that's something you want to do. But brace for impact. The route not easy. Right. After that, we talked about the income statement and balance sheet extracts. So in the income statement, right, you'll see the income statement figure of 2,000 appearing year after year. And again, it's the same amount because it is the straight line method. All right. Yeah, me, no problem. Most welcome. Right. For the balance sheet extract, so now in the non-current asset section in the balance sheet, you're going to have 3 columns. Cost, which is what we initially paid for the asset, which it should tell you. The accumulated depreciation, right? And then the net book value. So the net book value is the cost minus the accumulated depreciation, right? Because, of course, depreciation represents what? The loss in value. So if the value initially was 10,000 and it lost 2,000 worth of value, guess what? It's now worth 8,000. And as the years go by, we lose more and more value. So you'll notice that the depreciation rises while the net book value goes down. And what happens to the cost? Does it change? No, right? The cost stays the same. Unless you buy more of the same asset or dispose of it, then it doesn't change. Monsieur Antoine, what am I teaching for? I have Form 4 to teach. That's what I'm teaching for. And figure Form 5 is the only form. Anyhow, right. So we did that. We then took a look at the reducing balance method of depreciation, right? So we said this particular method uses a constant rate of a percentage rate, right? But this does not mean a constant dollar value, right? So in this particular case, what happens is that we end up charging less and less depreciation because we derive less and less benefits from the asset as time goes by, right? So for example, like I said, with your phones, when you now get your phone, the first year or two, it might work real good. And then you might start downloading more apps, saving more data, more stuff on your phone, and then it kind of gets clogged up, the storage. It's like some apps that are malfunction, whatever the case is, you know? Or again, cars on Trinidad roads. As we know, we are the pothole capital of the world, as far as I'm concerned. And the more you drive your cars, the more you're going to mash up, right? And so therefore what happens is the car drives real nice the first year, maybe 2 if you're lucky, and then thereafter it don't drive as well. And you have to spend more on repairs and these things. So it lost a lot of value early on, and now there's not as much value to lose, right? So in this particular case, like I said, this particular method of depreciation is more apt for assets that provide more benefit in the earlier years of life and less benefit as time goes by. Right now, the calculation, like I said, so they were. I like this particular version of it, which is what I call the tabular version. There's a version that some teachers use where they kind of go down year by year, so it's like a vertical version to this. I'm not a huge fan of it. I'm not saying anything is wrong with it. I just don't like it. If you like to use it, that's perfectly fine. Go ahead. It's not wrong at all. Right. So in this particular case, we had an asset costing 10,000. The rate of depreciation per year, the rate at which it's losing value, is 10%. So every year, the asset loses 10% of its value. Now, the mistake people think they make, is they think, okay, well, it's just 10% of this every year. What's 10% of 10,000? Well, that's 1,000. So losing 1,000 every year. But that's not the case. What we are losing 10% of is the value at start or at the start of the year. So for example, if we go to the table, so we have 3 years, year 1, year 2, year 3. So the net book value at start. So the net book value again is the cost minus what? The depreciation on the asset. Now at the very, very start of the asset's life, we haven't used it. Would there be any depreciation on it? No. If you don't use it, it hasn't lost any value, right? So at the start of the asset's life, the net book value happens to be the same as the cost. That's the only time it will ever happen, right? Now, during the course of the year, we use the asset, it depreciates, so we lose value. Our question tells us that we're losing 10% per annum. So what we do is we find 10% of this. Now, what we could actually do, if you all want, right, is we could actually have a column for the depreciation percentage. So let me just and then we have no, sorry, 1 second. Right. So maybe this might help, right? Some people like to see that, right? So this is the, hold on, let me copy and paste this. No, I want to copy that and also paste the values. Depreciation at 10%, right? And this is the depreciation, right? Right. So 10,000 by 10% is 1,000. And then we have to subtract that 1,000 from the value at start. And that gives us the value at end, 9,000. Right? And then what happens is the value at the end of year 1 becomes the value at the start of year 2. So this 9,000 here comes down here. And then we repeat the process. We multiply by 10% again and get 900. So again, I said the rate of depreciation, the percentage is constant, but the dollar value is not. All right? So 10% of 9,000 gives us 900. We subtract that from the 9,000 to get 8,100. All right? And then the value at the end of year 2 becomes the value at the start of year 3. 8,100. So now, again, in year 3, you lose 10%, which is 810. 810 from 8,100 gives us 7,290. All right? Okay. So with that now, right, we went on to some other stuff. But what I want to do today is I want to give you all a question in the reducing balance method, piece by piece to try. And I also want to take a look at a couple of past paper questions. Right now, don't be frightened. You're not going to be marked on them. Have no grade, right? I expect you all to be a little lost here and there. So that's not a problem, right? Not that I don't think you're capable. I just think sometimes the way the questions are presented creates a little bit of confusion. So I want to expose it to that just in case, you know, because that's what we have to do. We have to prep. I don't know if you guys heard any feedback from the exam this year about some things that came that technically weren't on the syllabus and the way they connected questions 2 and 3. So the exam threw a lot of people, right? I did the paper, I did the solutions, and I think the reaction to it was a bit, even my initial reaction was a bit outside. It was a bit of a knee-jerk reaction. But I do think it was unfair to bring it the way they did. That's my final say on it. I will also add to that if you kept your head on, the exam was doable. But the thing is, not everybody is prepared the same way. There are different situations in different classes in different countries in different schools. where people don't receive proper preparation. So I don't think it was a fair exam, but again, that's just my opinion, right? They had me feeling sick. Write them, Antoine. A letter has been sent. I'm actually part of a PoA group for teachers in the Caribbean. And a guy from Trinidad is writing one of the execs in the ministry to talk about it. All right. So we'll see what comes of that. I don't feel they care one way or the other. They don't get paid. So anyhow, that's a whole different story for next time. Right? That's not our concern. Our concern is learning how to do account. Right? Okay. So what I want to do is I'm actually just going to copy and paste this page down to this side here, right? All right. So what I want to do, I'm going to change the information on top of here, right? Okay, so this is not exams, classwork set 2. Classwork 2, info, right? So the cost of the asset, let's use a different figure. Let's use a different, so 24, okay, let's use 48,000. Let's use a big figure, 50 plus, oops, hold on. Okay, yeah, well, oops, shucks. I shouldn't, all right, hold on, I'll take that. Oops. Right, 50%, and then let's leave it at 3 years. I find after 3 years it just kind of gets a bit redundant, a little too much. So what I want you guys to do is what I just did. Right now, if anybody wants a printout of this here to try and fill in, let me know. I could do that if you think that's better. On the paper, since 2015, for most of the things on the paper, they will give you a table to fill in. They mightn't give you all the headings. They'll expect you to know what goes where. But in certain instances, they might just give you space because, again, the way people are prepared is different throughout the Caribbean. So the way someone is prepared to do this calculation might be different from how you're prepared, right? So I would say know how to do what you're supposed to do in the event you just get space. If you get a table and they give you some headings, well, feel nice. Okay, right. So okay, so what I want you to do is right, so you're gonna plug in the value 48 here. Now this column here with the percentage is optional. I think it helps some people to have a visual in terms of the multiplication going across, right? So if that works for you, then use it, right? There's no one correct way to present the working, right? This is just a calculation, right? The things that really have quote unquote formats are the financial statements, and even those formats aren't fixed. There's certain principles and certain underlying principles you can't really violate, otherwise it'll just be wrong, right? Because for example, with the balance sheet, assets will always be equal to capital plus liabilities, right? And similarly, capital will always be equal to assets minus liabilities. The way you present those things can differ. Antoine, looking tired. Antoine, I had summer school from July the 14th to August 22nd. 9 in the morning till 6 in the evening. I might have one of the classes off to go pick up my son from daycare. But and then we only have 7 weeks for summer this year. So I have 2 weeks at the end, I have one. So yeah, rest. That comes in bits and pieces. Yeah. And, figure out some systems to put in place, to have things run a bit more efficiently. That's part of it. Yeah, the first Monday is the 1st of September. That's correct. I'm trying to be on holiday because our Independence Day is the 31st, which is a Sunday, which means Monday's a holiday. Hey, thanks, man. I appreciate that. I put on my flyer, be sure to share it far and wide. Take a This is one for now. We're doing piece by piece, right? So to make sure everybody kind of on the same page. So, I'll put my Google Meet ladies in a minute or two. All right. Okay. All right. Let's start plugging in some stuff here. Okay. So, the value at start is 48,000. Depreciation percentage was 50%. And of course, the depreciation expense would simply be this multiplied by the percentage. Cool. And the value at end is the value at start minus the depreciation. Right, that's the first line. Right, now the value at the end of year one becomes the value at the start of year two. Repeat, right? So you're saying 50%. 50% of 24 now is 12. Subtract 12 from 24, we get 12 again. That's the value at the end of year two. And the value at the end of year two becomes the value at the start of year three. And then we repeat. 50% of that is 6,000. 6,000 from 12 will leave us with that, right? Kevin TT, how much percent is new vehicles depreciation annually? It depends on who you ask, Kevin. I don't really need car market right now, but I've been told that the instant you drive a new car off the lot, you have lost 40% of its value. I don't know how true that is. I can't imagine actually being true, but it's quite possible. But it also depends on the use of the vehicle, and the roads you're driving it on. You know, I would say usually 30% or 33%. Come on, Kevin, no problem. All right. Okay. All right, Haley, how are we looking there? Yeah. So you know what about you? You got the last 2 years? Good. All right. I'll take a look at your stuff, right? Okay, Kaylee, what are we looking like there? Everything okay with that first set of stuff? All right. Okay, cool. All right, Sean Maurice, what about you? Are you looking decent or any questions? Yeah. Which method? They should. They should, especially if it's a depreciation specific question, because you can have questions where depreciation is part of the whole, like for example, like an income statement or a balance sheet. In which case, it should tell you, right, what method to use. I have in the past seen them not specify a method, in which case you are free to use whichever one you want, but you have to state which one you're using, right? Now, when it's a question specifically on depreciation, usually they say, I've not seen one where they haven't said. Okay, no problems. All right, so I hope I answer your question there, Sean Maurice. Yeah? All right, so now after we do the journal entry, after the calculation, the next step is the journal entry. All right, give me one sec. Get it going. All right, so let me just clear out the stuff here. You know what? Hold on, give me a sec. I'm trying to. Let me see something here. So if we actually all right, give me one sec. I'm gonna run a print on this to see if I can give you guys to use it. Class to fill in instead of having to draw up some stuff. And what I could do as well from our online people, I could actually turn this into a PDF, make it fillable, and send it to you guys to type in if you want. Oh, you're good. You're good? All right. Let me print that one and then. Oh, right. So cool. All right. So what I have to do, right? So it is online. Just give me a sec. I have to actually blank up the screen. If I show my what you call it, if I show my WhatsApp while online, YouTube apparently doesn't like that. This is I'm exposing people's information, which they could have a point. So just sent you guys something in the WhatsApp chat. Now again, you don't have to use it. You can simply write out your stuff if you want, but you could simply open the PDF. Right? Open the PDF in a PDF browser, PDF reader, right? And you could actually type in that. Of course, I'm going to show you what I wanted to put. What I'll do is this one will go on top of here, here, and let's pull that in. Right, so let's pull this up. We could decrease that to about 200. I think 200 is sufficient. Right. More. Let's zoom in here a little bit. Okay, so for the journal entry, right, the general journal entry with respect to depreciation, we want the debit and credit to record depreciation, right? So I'll do year one as an example, and then I'll have you try year two and year three on you, right? So in year one, right, the double entry, and now the journal entries as in the debit, the item to debit and credit will stay the same. The figures are what's going to change from year to year, right? So we're going to debit income statement, sorry, right? And the amount is 24,000, right? So in the year one, the depreciation charge is 24,000, so that's going to go here, right? And then the credit goes to the provision for depreciation account, and the figure is the same, right? So all you're going to do for year two and year three, you're going to put these same. You're going to head up year two. You're going to put these same words, income statement and provision for depreciation, but you're going to use the year two figure and then the year three figure. All right, so take a swing. So you can write down this one, right, and the journal entry. Hopefully I printed out that thing with sufficient room for you guys to use. Hey, Shay. Afternoon. Oh, you're most welcome. I'm fine. Yeah, Sean Marie's talking to me. What's up? Hold on, for the journal entry. Yeah, you put this stuff in the color column here, right? So what you're recording here is the depreciation charge for the year, and that's what this column in the yellow or gold is, right? Now it happens to be the same as these figures here, so maybe that was a bad choice on my part to use 50%, but it's the figures in this column that go there. Does that help? All right. Yeah, all right. No problem. All right. So what we are recording is the depreciation charge for the year. To calculate the depreciation charge, you have to multiply the value at start by the percentage of for depreciation. And we got this figure, right? Hold on 1 second. Right? So I'll put those back just now, right? So these figures here are the depreciation charges for the year, right? The net book value, right? That would come into play when you're doing the balance sheet. So when you're recording depreciation, you need the depreciation charge, right? The net book value when it comes into play at the very end when you're doing your balance sheet. Does that help at all? All right, cool, no problems. So in year two, right, we have the same income statement, sorry, and sorry. Right, but what figure would we use in year two? Right, so if you go to year two on top of here, depreciation charge was 12,000. So that figure will go here. Year three, right, it's the same words again. So income, sorry, oops, sorry, provision for depreciation. And then in year three, the figure would be 6,000. Let's maximize this and then zoom in a little bit so you can see that a little more clearly. That's exactly 200. Okay, that's brilliant. Okay, Zavi, how are we looking there? Okay. All right, so you know, how about you? Looking like it. Katie, talk to me. You okay there? All right. Katie, talk to me. You okay with that? The journal entry, sorry. Sean Marie, you okay with it now? No problems. All right, so I'll give anybody a minute if they need it. Right now, yes, you can have narrations or narratives that go ahead and that tell you what the above entry is about. So in each year, it would simply say to record the depreciation charge for the year. So let me see if I can. I'm gonna fit it in, right? You don't have to. You can fit in maybe one. Let me see if I can just put that out. And then wrap. Where's the wrap? For the depreciation for the year. Right. So this particular item again would is usually something that would accompany the debit and the credit, right? Again, I didn't really leave much space for you to do it, but I'm just letting you know that that's what would go there, right? So if you can fit it, cool. If you can't, no problem. You don't have to write it down right now. Okay, so that's the general journal entry, the debit and the credit. So now we want to actually put these figures in the respective accounts, right? So here we have said what we are going to debit and what we are going to credit. So now we want to show that. We want to show the actual bookkeeping for the depreciation in our books. We want to show the depreciation account, right? So one sec. Okay. So what I have on top of here is I have just the year one item. Okay, yeah. Right. So in the provision for depreciation account, now I just put like a generic asset. It could be furniture, equipment, motor vehicle, buildings. Well, not buildings, right? So what does it say here in the general journal? It says to debit income statement and credit the provision for depreciation T account. Now that is what this is. Whoops, sorry, my bad. Right? Okay, that's a way too far. Right? So that's what this is. This item down here is the provision for depreciation T account. So we have a debit side and we have credit side. So what does it say that in the journal entry? We have to credit the provision account. So when you credit an account, you go on the credit side and record the information or the entry. Okay, so most people teach you all to go from right to left, from left to right. I like to go in the reverse order because I think the most important thing is, well, how much money? Because when you're recording transactions, what we recorded? Money, right? Okay, so in year one, what was the depreciation charge? 24,000, right? So to me, it start with that, 24,000, right? Now, what was the other account affected? That's income statement, right? And what year was it? It was in year one. Cool. Right. So this is how you would record the provision for depreciation for the year in year one in the provision account, right? Now, that's the adjusting entries and the closing entries. We're going to balance it off, right? So long story short, what we have to do is after you put that on the credit side here, that's the only entry, right? In this particular method of bookkeeping. What we do is we balance off the account. Right? So to balance simply means to make both sides equal or to show how much is left in the account. Now we put 24,000 on the credit side. So it's quite easy to say and to tell that, hey, this account has a credit balance of 24,000 because that's the only entry in the account. So clearly the balance must be 24,000 on the credit side. Right? Now, what we do here is we, well, if there were multiple figures here, we total it up. So that's what we'll add that 24,000. And the balance here would just be the same 24,000. What I'll do is because I can't really put the double lines because I mean like that. I mean y'all could see that as a double line. Not really. So what I'll do is I'll put this line in a kind of light gray to show that that's the total. Right? And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring that balance down to year two. Right. Now, what I want you to do is to repeat what I did for year two. Now, in year two, if you go up here in your journal entries, you'll see that year two had a depreciation amount of how much? 12,000. So you'll put year two income statement on 12,000. And when you balance off now, you'll have 2 years worth of depreciation. So you have to add 24 and 12. That'll give you 36, and that'll be a new balance carried down. And then you'll bring it down to year three, and you'll just repeat one more time for me with the depreciation in year three. All right, so take your time, right? Start with year two, right? If you're having any trouble, if you didn't understand what I said to do or how I said to do it, let me know. It's not a problem, right? That's why I'm here to help you understand better. Hey Aaron, how you doing? Good day. Good to have you on. How are we going? I'll come and see the first one now. Right. So what we do is in year two, right? Once again, we have, oops, sorry, statement, and then we put 12,000 this time. So you had that, right? All right. Right. So now at the end of that year, sorry, the balance carried down is the total, right? So 24 and 12, and you correctly have 36. Right. So the balance would be equal to 36. Right. So what I'll do is I'll put a little gray here. Right. And then what I want to do in the final year is just to bring down the 36 here, right? And then charge the last year's depreciation, right? Some people's, not every teacher's style will resonate with every student. That's all I can say about that. Okay? It's also very possible based on the feedback I've received from other students as well. I have one who I think just finished upper six. I mean, right, it's Sedalia's older sister, Soraya. Soraya's with me since Form 4, since 2021. Yeah. Sorry. Um, yeah, only name has not been having luck attracting good teachers, but they get in. That might be better than none. I feel like there's a shortage of teachers, PoA and other. All right, so in the final year now, the balance brought down will be equal to 36, right? And then once again we charge depreciation. This year the charge is 6,000. Right, and of course it'll say income statement as the details. And the balance at end therefore is the sum of those two. Right, so 36 and 6 is 42. Balance there will be the same here, 42. Again, I'll put a little highlight because I can't double line it. I'll just pull it up now so you can see the whole thing. Right, so remember the highlighted parts are like the totals, and we're closing off the year at that point, and then coming on to a new year below that. All right. Sean Maurice, how are we with our T account? Issues or questions? Was good? All right, good. And Katie, what about you? How are you feeling there? All right, lovely. All right, so how are we looking? A little better? All right, cool. All right, so then the last two little pieces to go, which are the income statement extract and the balance sheet extract. So of course, we're going to do one at a time. All right. Okay. Hold on. I wonder if I can I do side by side. Let's put that on that side, that on that side. All right. Pull this across. This will zoom in right here. Right. So for the income statement extract, right? Less expenses, provision for depreciation. Right. So we just have 3 years worth, right? So I went back to the general journal because you could use that to populate the income statement extract. And what we would need is, of course, the items to go in the income statement. Right. So in year one, we have 24,000. In year two, we have 12. And in year three, we have 6. Right. So what you're going to do, you're going to put like year, sorry, you put like one, not year one. Yeah. So year one. You put 24,000. Right. Now, what I want you to do is just finish off. You put year 2 and 12 and year 3 and 6. All right. Let's see. So in year 2 now, what we have? 12,000. And in year 3, what we have? 6,000. Right. That's all. Okay. Right. So the income statement extract tends to be, well, what some people like because in some cases is the easiest. Now, you could also have used the T account to populate it because if you notice in T account, it says income statement 24, income statement 12 in year 2, and income statement 6 in year 3. So you could have also pulled the information to populate the income statement extract from the depreciation T account. All right, because again, it's the same information you would have used. All right, now the final item we have to do is the balance sheet extract. All right, now what I want to use, what do I use this one, boy? I do want to use the T account. I just have to try. Okay, let me see how best to kind of position stuff here. All right, if we put that on the top there, this one below, and we go to it. With this. Oh, yeah, sorry. Let me just see how best I could position this up here. Okay. All right, hold on. So check it. The income statement figures 24, 12, and 6. Those went in the balance sheet. See? 24, 12, and 6. The balances would go in the balance sheet, right? What I mean by that is as follows, right? So, year one, right? So the cost of the asset, if you go back to the source information, 48,000, right? The cost is 48,000. Now, in the first year, the balance for depreciation, if you go up here, is 24, right? So we put that down here, 24, and we're subtracting it. Now, again, I like to use brackets to remind myself, hey, I'm subtracting something. Oh, shy, this is depreciation for provision, for principles of accounts, PoA, provision for depreciation. Right, and what we do, we subtract 48 minus 24 is 24. Right, now, in year two, the cost is still 48, but it's just that the depreciation balance is now different. We added 12 to it. So if you check out your T account, in year two, the balance carried on, we'll say what, 36. So you're going to put that here and then subtract. In year three, the cost is still 48, but the total for depreciation, if you look in your, sorry. Okay, yeah, if you look, sorry, yeah, in your T account, you look for the balance in year three, and you'll put it there. I think it was 42, right? Yeah. Yeah, sure. One second. Right. So in the non-current assets section in balance sheet, we have three columns: cost, depreciation, which is the balance in the account, and the net book value. Right? And what we do is we take away the depreciation from the cost to find the net book value. Right? Now the cost doesn't change. That was given to us here. Right? The cost of the asset is 48,000, and that doesn't change. Right? So the cost doesn't change unless you buy more or you sell some. Right? But neither of those are happening in this question, and not in most of the questions you will see. Right? The depreciation figure, right? That's for the balance sheet, right? So if the income statement figure went in the income statement, like for example, right? So in the T account for depreciation, these income statement figures of 24, 12, and 6 went in the income statement, right? See, 24, 12, and 6, right? In respect of the provision for depreciation. So if the income statement figures go in the income statement, the balances will have to go in the balance sheet, right? So these figures here, the 24, 36, and the 42, those are the balances for depreciation at the end of years 1, 2, and 3. So one second, let's put on the screen, right? Sorry. I can't. Right. So at the end of year one, what's going to happen is they're going to have, right, your 48,000 minus the 24. So 48,000 being the cost of the asset and 24,000 being the balance carried down here. And when you subtract, you happen to get 24. In year two, balance is 36. So that goes in the depreciation column in the balance sheet. And when you subtract, 48 minus 36 is 12. And in the final and third and final year now, your balance at the end is 42, which goes here. And you subtract going across and get that figure. Does that help? All right, no problems. All right, so what I'll do is I'll leave this up here. I'll give you a minute or two. Correct that. All right, so let's take a look. Oops. A bit, shall we? Right, so again, the cost does not change. The value for depreciation does, as in the total balance, right? So in year 2, we charged 12 more. 24 and 12 was 36, right? Which we saw as the balance in the T account at the end of year 2. And 48 minus 36 is 12. And at the end of year 3 now, we charge 6,000 more, which gave us a total balance of 42,000. When you subtract that, you get left with 6, right? And that is the balance sheet extract for the, well, non-current asset section, specifically with reference to the depreciation on the asset. All right, okay. All right, Kaylee, how are you feeling with that? You okay there? What about Shell Maurice? You okay there too? Lovely. All right, Haley, what about you? Cool? All right. So you know how it went? Came? Okay, cool. No problems. Talk to me. Yeah? Okay. All right. So, folks, we recapped the topic from, well, the item we did last week, right? So now I want to expose you all to some possible stuff. Now, this is not a test. This is me showing you some stuff, and I'm going to have you try some things as well. Now, actually, hold on. I did open my past paper breakdown, right? So because the depreciation was not tested very often, to be honest, right? The PDF I have here, which I could send to you guys, right? So we had questions from, this was what, boy, 2012, right? Hold on. 2005, after 2005, we had 2012, right? Yeah, so they used to have very, very long gaps between when they tested depreciation. Now, 2012, 2014 was just 2 years. And then in June, May, June the same year, they had a next depreciation question, right? Then 2015. So they brought it kind of close. Then 2017, skip a couple of years. And after 2017, the next time it was seen was in 2022, right? So it doesn't come very often, but the funny part about it is after 2022, it was seen in 2024 and 2025. But January, right? In terms of when it came in May, June, I didn't update my record for the 2025. Anyhow, I know depreciation wasn't there, right? So depreciation. So just to within search by row, search by columns. Find all. Right. So we have a little piece here in 2017. That wasn't much. I remember that question, right? So hold on. Next. 2014. So I did talk about that just now, right? In 2005. So look at that. After 2005, there's like a 9-year gap until depreciation came again in May. Right? It came more in Jan. And in 2004, it came, 2002. So it came a little closer together in the very early 2000s. Right? So the thing about it is, and I did bring this up in the PoA chat for the teachers in the Caribbean, that there's too much to test on the syllabus given the current exam structure. So you'll spend your time learning lots of things that you probably mightn't get tested on. Now, again, granted that the exam is not the be-all and end-all of your education, and you should really be able to appreciate what you learn, how to apply it, right? But we know the exam is a thing. That's kind of what we're training for, right? So it's a little disappointing when you spend months, years, and especially like earlier this year, the night before the exam, people cramming manufacturing, part, all kind of stuff, and none of that come. It was a bit disheartening, you know? But it's just the way things have been done, but that don't mean it's the right way to do it. Anyhow, that's a whole, again, a different convo for our next time. So what I want to do is I want to actually give you guys one of the earlier past paper questions, right? So let me actually extract it. Right, so this one actually has a little table for you all to use, right? Current page. Right, so I'm gonna print it out for those in class. And I'm going to make it a fillable form for those online. Okay, cool. So ladies online, just give me a minute. Let me just blank you off a little bit. All right, so while I upload that to you. Huh. Right, back in, okay. Let me give it out in class. We'll talk through it. I'll give you a few minutes to try. Right, very free to write on the paper. Yeah, when they ask, I was like, already? Sometimes it used to come up like February. But then it's coming out September, October, like not after long after the Jan timetable, which I found was kind of strange. But I guess we had it longer, we had it the better. Shy pretty. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, DD4. Sorry, I forgot to answer the question. My bad. My apologies. All right, one sec. Uh-huh. Right. Sorry. Okay. Now, we don't have to worry about the earlier definitions and stuff. I mean, if you want to write them out, you're very free to do so. So let's focus a little bit on part B, shall we? So it says Tamron Company bought equipment costing 80,000 and charged depreciation at a rate of 10% per annum using the reducing balance method. Using the information above, copy and complete the table for the first 3 years of the equipment's life. Okay, so this here would, sorry, wrong thing. This would resemble what we did in the, the calculation table here. All right, so you start off with, now they have different columns than what I put here, well, 1 or 2, right? If you notice, they have the expense. So what they did is they didn't put a column for the percentages, right? Now you could write the percentage in that same column to show the multiplication if you want, but you don't have to. But what they have here is the presence of an accumulated depreciation column, right? Now, to me, that's not the usual thing. And what I would say initially, leave out that piece initially, right? So what I would like you to do, right? So the cost or net book value before depreciation. So in year one, what did we say about that? Is the literal cost. So 80. So 80 would go here, right? Then the depreciation expense is 10% of that value. So you're going to find 10% of this value of 80,000 and put it here. And then when you subtract it, that value goes in the last column. And that's the value at end. And the value at the end of year one becomes the value at the start of year two, right? So whatever value is here, you bring it down and then you repeat. You find 10% of that, put it here, and you subtract and put it here. And this value goes back to the front, right? After you finish that stuff, we'll plug in the figures and then I'll tell you how to deal with the column here. If you feel you know how to do it, by all means, right? And of course, my Google Meet ladies, Kaylee and Maurice, I sent you guys a PDF of that fillable PDF of the same question, but you're free to write it out if you want. Question? All right, so let's start up with this, right? So the cost or NBV in year at the start of year one is 80,000, right? So it bought the equipment costing 80,000, right? So okay. Now the depreciation expense. Now what's the rate? The rate is 10%. So we find 10% of 80,000, that's just 8,000. Now again, we're going to bypass that third, well, technically fourth for now. And the value after depreciation is the value at start minus the depreciation. In this case, 72,000. And then the value at the end of year one becomes the value at the start of year two. All right. Okay. Now we find 10% of that, which is 7,200. Right. So 65. We subtract that. I think we get 64.8. Right. The value at the end of year two becomes the value at the start of year three. And then we find 10% of that, so 64.80. If it was 6,500, it'd be 58, 320. Anybody? 58, 320, yeah. Right, so if you have that, then cool, you're cooking with gas, right? Now, to find the accumulated depreciation, basically, you have to add up the depreciation as you go down year by year. What I mean by that, in the first year, now to accumulate first of all means to build up over time. Now, in year one, you only have 1 year's worth of depreciation accumulated. So the figure that would go here would be the same, would be the same 8,000. Right? In year two now, we have 2 years worth of depreciation, 8,000 and from year one at 7,200 in year two. So what we do to find the accumulated depreciation is we add those two together. We get 15,200. And in the final year, we will have 3 years worth of depreciation accumulated. So we add all three together. And that'll give us 21,680. Okay, Sheila Maurice, how are you feeling with what's on the screen there? Any questions? Are we okay? All right, Kaylee, how are you feeling with that? You good too? Kaylee, you there? Or? I don't know. Selena, how about you? Kind of half and half. Right, I'll come and take a look just now, right? Um, sorry, Haley, what about you? Zabi, we cool with that? Okay. All right. So here's what I want you all to do now. I know the question didn't. Well, the question does ask for a balance sheet extract for the end of the third year of use, right? Well, what I want you all to do is I want you to give me. So hold on, let me put this on top here. Put this below here and put them up, right? So what I want is here the balance sheet extract, right? 53 here. But of course, what I have below here is just the example, right? So you're going to head up balance Tamron Company, balance sheet extract, right? So of course, their cost is 80,000, right? And this column here, so these figures here, right? Those are what we're going to put inside these columns. Sorry, inside of these cells here in this column here, and then we're just going to subtract going across. And the good news is we actually have the figures that are going to go here because it's supposed to match with these three figures here. So again, it's going to have 80,000 in each of these cells here. Here, you're going to put the accumulated depreciation figures and then subtract going across, right? Okay. Let me give you also, you're going to have to write it out, unfortunately. But let me just take a look. Get them all. Tuesday. Yeah, up on top here. Right, so the term depreciation, so we could even check back in the notes here, right? So, right, this is a loss in value of an asset over time. Right, the double entry used to record depreciation, but we saw that in the journal entry. Where was that? That was around here. Right, the journal entry was debit income statement and credit provision, or as your teacher has it, debit depreciation expense and credit provision for depreciation, which is also acceptable. And the causes of depreciation, right, would be, now they asked for three, right? Hold on, let me zoom out a little bit, right? Right, so wear and tear, right? Or use, right? When you use the asset, it breaks down, right? It's used up, right? Obsolescence, right? And depletion, right? And there's a fourth one I have, which is called the passage of time or the effluxion of time, right? So you have your causes there. Wear and tear through use, obsolescence, and depletion. Or the double entry to record. Yeah, that's the double entry to record is the journal entry. Right, sorry, where was I? So I'll give a minute or two again. All right, cool. So what I want to do is this. All right, so the cost, my head blocking this. Right, and maybe what we could do, we could just zoom in on that piece there because that's the relevant part. It's a little big, 300% is quite big. So yeah, 240 is more than sufficient. Right, so we're going to clear out these pieces here. Cool. So the cost, as we know, is 80,000 from the question, right? Now the accumulated depreciation, right, is these figures here. So we have 8,000 in the first year, 15,200 in the second year, and then 21,680 in the third. And all we have to do is subtract going across. Sorry. All right, so 80 minus 8 is 72, which matches to here, right? 80,000 minus 15,2 is 64, it matches here. 1 second, huh? Right, and then 80 minus 21,680, which gives us 58,320, which of course matches here. Okay, cool. Right, so that's the balance sheet extract for this question. Okay, right, so that's that piece. So what I want to do, okay, cool. Did not realize I could do that. All right, so that was the 2012 question. Next one I wanted to do, right, so with Mary Jane now, let's zoom in a little bit. I'll print this out. So it doesn't come with the stuff to fill in, unfortunately. So I'll see what I can do. It was a small fleet of vehicles she makes available to the general public for hire, right? Okay. Okay, right. So let me print a copy here for those in class. Now, what they want us to do here is to do up the depreciation, the calculation for depreciation for 2 years, right? But there's a little twist in the question. I'll show you what that twist is. Yeah. So, I think Keely left. Oh no! Oh no! Okay, let's try that again. Oh no, I don't want to do. Right, extract it. Right, let's print that. Yeah.
Do I keep an attendance this month for the classes?
Because what might happen is, depending on when their exams are,
Yeah.
we might be able to put on extra sessions if they're available. So we want to make sure and
Yes, so we
charge
just
it.
had that,
Who's this? That's Zoe. Yeah, I didn't know. Yeah. The exam is when? It's 30th?
30th this month.
It's on Monday. Yeah, because the 1st of July is a Tuesday.
Okay.
Right. So she could potentially make up for whatever she missed. Okay, yeah. So whether they put on your phone and share with me each day or whatever the case is, or whatever app you choose to use, or just even if you just send it to me on WhatsApp every day,
Okay.
that's fine. Once we have a record, because that would be very important.
I'll make a note of that.
Yeah. Thank you. Don't have too much time again. What I want us to do is at least the calculation, right? Now, I'm not a fan of giving homework. I mean, that's stuff from school to deal with, right? But the thing is, right, so next week we have to discuss what's going on, because next week Thursday is a public holiday, and I don't usually have class on the holidays. Well, okay, I used to, but that was before, like, I have a wife and 2 children. So now that really happened just so, right? If you all want to have a class on the holiday, you will let me know. Those who have exams, right, we could discuss that because I know you all might want to put in the work, so we'll see. The week after, we kind of back on schedule, as far as I know, and then thereafter, it might be a little iffy because, of course, everybody will be in the midst of exams. Now, of course, if you have exams, okay, you have a timetable for when the exam is or a date? 26th, okay. So, oh, that's in 2 weeks. Okay, so what we will do, we'll look to see if there are any other days you might be able to come, like a 4 to 6, so we could do work on specific topics and at least prepare for those topics. If you also have a list of topics that are coming for the end of the term, that would be good to let me know. All right? Okay. Right. Okay, so what I want us to do, please, is, oh, right, no, I was supposed to show you the twist. Right, okay. Come on, Philip. No, not what I want to happen. All right, hold on. Put that back there. All right, so I'm gonna copy and paste this to kind of look a little strange. Right. Right. So let's go to the top. So Mary Jane owns a small fleet of vehicles which she makes available to the general public for hire. On 1 Jan 2011, her limousine, which originally cost 90,000, what does it say? Had an accumulated depreciation of 9,000. Now it says Mary Jane provides for depreciation using the reducing balance method at a 10% per annum. Now, what this means is that there's an existing depreciation of how much? 9,000. So right now, the asset has already been in use. So what they want us to do is they want us to do, well, the first thing is to do the depreciation expense for 2011 and 2012. So the current year and the following year, right? So 2011, 1 second. Second. Sorry, let me just answer the question. Hi, good evening. So I did offer that class could be online if the weather was an issue. So I think Sean Reese will be attending online. If you want Luna to come in person, that's fine too, right? But if she wants to come online, that's fine as well. Just let me know what she wants. Right. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I don't know why I didn't. Right. Okay. So check this. What they're telling us here is, sorry, no, that's the wrong thing. No. Right. Right. So what it's telling us is at the start of 2011, the limousine, which originally cost 90, already had depreciation of 9. So if you bought it at 90 and you've depreciated at 9 already, how much you have? Sorry. If you bought it at 90 and you've depreciated it 9,000, what's the value left? 90 minus 9, which is to be 81. So that would be the value here, 81,000. Right now, interestingly enough, even though they didn't ask for it, I'm just going to put it for the sake of illustration, right? We bought the asset at 90,000. We depreciated it at 10%. 10% of 90 is 9. So when we subtract 9 from 90, what do we get? 81. And the balance at the end of year 1 becomes the balance at the start of year 2. Right? So what I want you to do is just finish off for the next 2 years, right? So this will just be 10% here. Sorry, 1 sec. Right? You're multiplying, going across, and then you're subtracting that figure from the figure at start to get the figure at end. All right, so let's finish that off for me. Hey, Keely. All right, so what we're doing, we have a Jan 2014 question here. And they said Mary Jane owns a small fleet of vehicles which she makes available to the general public for hire. On the 1st of Jan 2011, her limousine, which originally cost $90,000, had an accumulated depreciation of $9,000. So there was, at the start of January, there was already depreciation on it. It goes on to say Mary Jane provides for depreciation using the reducing balance method at a rate of 10% per annum. Right? So, hold on. Right. So what we did is we put up the table here and we said, look, at the start of 2011, we have 81,000 and it originally cost 9 and has existing depreciation. Sorry, it originally cost 90,000 and has existing depreciation of 9,000, which happens to be 10%. So 90 minus 9 is 81, which is brought down here. Right? So we figured, well, okay, basically what happened is they bought the limousine in 2010 for 90,000 and depreciated it for 10% for that year. So in year 2 now, the depreciation will be 81 by 10%, which is 8,100. And then we're going to take 81,000 and minus 8,100. I think it's 72,900. Yeah. And then the balance at the end of year 2 becomes the balance at the start of year 3. We find 10%, 72,910. I think we get 65,610 when you subtract. Right. Okay. So we'll stop there. Right now, of course, the question wants more things. They want you to drop the provision account for those 2 years and to prepare the non-current asset section for the balance sheet for one particular year. All right. So I think I have that. I could send that to you guys so you guys can take a look at it. Right. Now, again, I'm not assigning it for homework or anything because I think you guys are already busy enough. Anyhow, we have to put a pin in it for today. Okay.
So Liliana was good.
Okay, cool.
So I hate transformations, so I better get her real practice with that.
Okay, good.
So she was good when we did small thing once she kind of mixed up the X and Y coordinates when she was
okay.
taught in that.
All right.
But she was good. For Ree, I think she was even Ree, she was again. And then Zoe, she just ran through some Pythagoras theorem.
Okay.
They had like a kind of SP looking at problem, like they had to do like a project.
Right.
So I helped her out with the discussion part.
Okay, interesting.
So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Right.
I figure there's no wrong answer with the discussion.
And then tomorrow didn't come today.
No.
Okay.
So I sent you the class.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's right. Good job. Thank you very much. All right.
I'll see you
Tomorrow. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
All right, later. Bye. All right. Okay, yeah, guys. So we're gonna put a pin in it there for today. So again, most likely no class next week because next week is a public holiday. I will send a message in the chat and to the parents to discuss if we're having a session, and if not, like I said, because everybody's exam is pretty soon, we're gonna try to put some extra sessions on whenever you guys are available, right? Because we have, I mean, like I said, the Form 5s are gone, so my 6:30 to 8:30 sessions are wide open. The Monday and Wednesday 4 to 6 are also technically open. I have a few math people there, but Misha could see to them, Mishka and Caitlin, as a matter of fact. And I could deal with you guys for the PoA or the ad maths or whatever the case is. But we'll try and time it and figure it out. Anyhow, all right. So Sean Reese, I'll log in off there for now, but I'll check you back in about half an hour for, I guess it's ad maths, right? Okay. No, it'll just be you and Luna. I don't know if Luna's coming online or in person. Okay. Yeah. So that way, I could do like this. So basically, I'll just kind of do what you guys want me to do. So I'm hoping you guys want. Right. Right. Then that makes it a lot easier. That's fine. So yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So you'll get to do what you want to do. Yeah. 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 Yeah, same thing. Okay, I'll see you soon. Bye. Okay. All right, Keely. Sorry you got bumped off there. I'll send a link to the replay so you can always watch this segment you missed. Right, but it wasn't too much. All right, but I'll so again next week is a holiday, but we'll see if we could do a class on either a different day or maybe on that day itself at an earlier time. But we'll discuss that. And apart from that, if you need help on accounts between now and next week, you can always message me, right? Okay. All right. Bye bye.